How does she end up here, beaten and left for dead?
Very, very cold and dark. I couldn't stand up. I was in shock.
A cigar-smoking, hog-riding private eye, fixated on finding her attacker.
You take whatever clue you have. It might take you to a dead end, might take you to a blind alley, but it might take you to the promised land.
A single frame of surveillance tape that nobody else saw.
This was the defining moment in the whole case right here.
This is a pretty bizarre theory.
Just one big problem. She has no memory of what took place.
She has no clue what the heck happened to her.
I saw dreams. I saw nightmares.
So how can he be sure his hunch is the right one?
I go, you gotta be kidding me.
Here's Deborah Roberts.
Tonight, a story of sex, lies, and videotape, and an almost deadly twist on that expression, now you see her, now you don't. As you're checking into hotels on vacation this summer, consider this. What do those surveillance cameras really capture? Because tonight it's going to take a modern-day Sherlock Holmes with a wild hunch, a Harley, and a black leather jacket to crack the mystery of the vanishing blonde. It's a quiet, lonely place, a speck of grassy land around an undeveloped cul-de-sac on the outskirts of Miami. There's a no dumping sign in plain view. But on the morning of February 21st, 2005, a utility worker passing by notices that someone has ignored it in a big way. Curled up in the grass, a woman, naked, unconscious, and beaten within an inch of her life.
The woman was airlifted to Jackson Memorial Hospital's Ryder Trauma Center in critical condition.
Pretty much somebody dumped her out there.
To die?
Yes.
So it was pretty amazing that she was found alive.
Absolutely.
Miami-Dade Detective Alan Foote caught the case of the mystery woman with no ID.
Boy, I've got a Jane Doe on my hands. She was beat up and cut up. She had cuts on her face. She has swollen jaws, bruises on her body.
And unconscious.
And unconscious.
At the crime scene, one potential clue, a blue blanket. Police have it tested for trace evidence. It turns up nothing. They also canvass houses nearby.
Try to see if anybody noticed anything, and of course, we got no response there.
I didn't see anything or heard anything.
As the news spreads,
there's no clothing, there's no license or anything that would distinguish who she is.
The mystery deepens. The victim remains unconscious until the following day. Then the darkness recedes.
I woke up. I had a lot of pain. I remember somebody asked me what was my name.
And what did you learn about her once she came to?
She was able to write some information down on a piece of paper.
The petite mystery woman still can't speak, but she scrawled out some basic information. Her name is Inna Budnitska. She's from Ukraine, and she works for one of the many cruise lines that operate in Miami.
I wanted to have an occupation in my life. I want to be someone.
That all makes sense. But what about this? Her attorney's name?
Yes, her attorney's name.
Did that strike you as a little strange?
Yes, it did. I did not know whether she was involved in something civil or something criminal. But for someone to ask for an attorney as a victim right off the bat does throw a red flag.
Maybe they thought it was unusual that someone would ask for an attorney, but this woman had a horrific assault and probably was reaching for anything that she could.
Here's her story. Inna has been injured on the ship and has filed suit against the cruise line. That's why she had an attorney.
Yes, I didn't know nobody. I was alone up here. So the only one person who I knew, that was my attorney. That was my lawyer.
While she's convalescing from her injury, Inna's being housed by the cruise line at this hotel, the Airport Regency, about 10 miles east of the vacant lot where she was found. The hotel would prove crucial to the mystery, especially its sophisticated security system.
We have 16 cameras covering the whole perimeter of the hotel, including parking lot, the entrance, the exits, the lobby, the restaurant, the lobby bar, the front desk, the back exits. Those cameras have a motion sensor detector. And then we have 2 security guards at night and on duty, so we can see, anybody or anything that happens in the perimeter of the hotel.
For privacy reasons, the hotel does not have cameras in the elevators or the upstairs hallways. That would make a big difference later. But for now, Detective Foote has this pile of DVDs from the first-floor cameras to comb through. He begins scanning those recordings for any evidence of the crime.
Now, where's the guard shack? Up here?
It's here, on this side.
Back at the hospital, Ina is eventually able to fill in some blanks about her whereabouts on the evening of the attack. She says she'd gone out with a friend that night to a restaurant in Coconut Grove.
I had fun. We stayed there a while, had some drinks.
She remembers returning by taxi alone shortly after midnight. But get this, the security cameras catch her leaving again at 3:33 a.m. That's her in the red jacket. 7 minutes later, she's back at 3:40.
Did that strike you as odd that she's going and coming in the middle of the night?
I mean, she could explain that.
Ina recalls going to the gas station across the street to buy a phone card to call her mom back in Ukraine, which is 7 hours ahead.
I'm very close with my mother, and I used to call her very often back in Ukraine.
But here's where the case really turns into a mystery which could stump Sherlock Holmes. After returning from her errand, Ina walks to the lobby elevators at 3:41 a.m. and is never seen by hotel cameras again.
It's the last we see of her, so that's how we believe she was attacked in the hotel.
The next thing Ina remembers is regaining consciousness for a brief moment in that vacant lot where she was found at 8:30 that morning.
It was very cold. If I remember, it was like very, very cold and dark and cold. I couldn't stand up and I could not walk.
But everything that happened in between the elevator and the cul-de-sac is a total blank.
The memory was not clear because I was in pain, in too much pain. My head was not working, absolutely. I was in shock.
The biggest mystery, of course, is how did she get out of the hotel? Do you come up with any theories?
I was looking for anything.
Police are confounded. They even inspect the landscaping below Ina's fourth-story room on the off chance she might have been lowered or dropped from there.
I'm looking in her room over the balcony. I'm looking in the bushes to see if a body was thrown over and there was a body imprint, or if maybe she was lowered by rope.
That was kind of a long shot.
Long shot.
A long shot that didn't pay off. No evidence of Ina being lowered from the window. This case is a bona fide whodunit. New questions and suspects popping up faster than any answers. Is the victim really a victim, or was she somehow involved? And could someone from her personal life or the hotel staff be the missing key to this case?
Did you accept that story?
No. So with that, he became my suspect.
Stay with us.
"2020 continues. Here again, Deborah Roberts.
It's a haunting mystery. Who attacked a young woman and left her for dead in this vacant cul-de-sac? Detective Alan Foote's search for clues has become an exercise in frustration.
So where did you turn next?
I start following other leads, suspects in the case.
There's no shortage of early suspects. For starters, that friend who was out with Ina the night she was attacked. He's 52-year-old Peter Demolius, a Greek national, and, like Ina, a cruise line employee.
They asked me what happened with Ina.
Peter confirms Ina's account. A dinner, some drinking in Coconut Grove, then a friendly parting of ways around midnight when Ina takes a cab back to the hotel. He cooperates fully with police.
Why I have to worry? I don't worry. I know I am not on the crime.
But Detective Foote uncovers this troubling fact. Demolius has been arrested just months before after he and Ina had a dispute at a local nightclub.
Peter felt that there were some unsavory characters there and wanted her to leave. So she did not want to leave, and he kind of grabbed her by the arm and they got into a little argument, and an officer working security arrested him for domestic violence.
Did that make him a suspect in your mind?
Partially.
Then there's this guy, the hotel night manager, George Perez.
The very first time I met George Perez was, he looked at me and said, "Oh my God, I hate cops."
Pretty blunt, pretty honest.
Oh yeah, I'm used to it.
Was I nervous? Absolutely, I would have every right to be.
Along with that instant hostility, Perez attracts police attention because he's seen with Ina in the lobby after she returns from her night out with Peter. You can see the sleeve of her red jacket on the front desk security camera here.
At some point in time, I do see Ina coming and going from the hotel. I see her talking to the desk clerk.
Then at 2:16 a.m., an odd encounter.
He left the front desk unattended and went into the elevator with the victim and was gone for approximately 15 minutes and then came back down alone.
Perez initially says he helped Ina to her room because she'd had too much to drink.
So I escorted her, made sure she got into the room safely, came back down to my post.
Did she look intoxicated on the tape to you?
No, no. So with that, he became my second suspect.
In fact, Perez would later admit that he'd been socializing with Ina.
I was friends with her in the workplace. I also had a friendship with her outside of the workplace. I thought very highly of her.
Given that Perez had a master key to all the rooms, the lead is promising. By now, one solid piece of evidence has emerged. DNA from the attacker was recovered from Ina's body because she wasn't just beaten, she was also raped. Samples are obtained from both suspects.
Which I voluntarily agreed to, without a problem.
Also, I don't afraid about that.
Now possibly an even bigger break. Ina herself says she's begun to piece together memories of the attack, filling in the big blank between the elevator and the cul-de-sac, but only in fragments.
What was she able to tell you about what had happened?
Bits and pieces.
I saw dreams, I saw nightmares. For me, it was very difficult to realize what was the reality, what was not the reality.
No, she had a picture of the guys who had assaulted her.
There were two white gentlemen. I don't think she could give me an age. They were either Hispanic or European accents.
I remember, I guess, at least two other people. I don't remember the faces. I remember like a noise, and I remember a person like standing over you, putting like a pillow or something. And then it's dark, you know, it's just like a feeling that you cannot breathe.
Ina even undergoes hypnosis to clarify her memories. She recalls being carried down a back staircase out into a car, driving somewhere, and being raped in the back seat.
I remember like somebody hits you all the time. I remember a laugh, somebody was laughing at this point.
But for every promising leads, there are twice as many disorienting puzzles. For one thing, Ina's certain she was attacked in her room, but that certainty just adds to Detective Foot's headaches.
I found it as a typical room, undisturbed.
No sign of a fight or assault?
No, beds unmade. There were, you know, I found beer bottles. I found clothes hanging in the bathroom, but nothing to indicate that there had been any kind of a struggle.
As for Ina's memory of being dragged down the back stairs, out an exit, and into a car, no dice. The exit door is covered by this security camera, which didn't capture anything like that.
The camera's working properly, so we reached a dead end on that point. It just didn't fit.
Detective Foot suspects there's more to Ina's story than she's able or willing to tell. Aside from her hazy recollection, there's a big, lingering question about her movements that night. Like many hotels, the Airport Regency has a key card security system, which logs each time a guest swipes their key to enter a room. Now, here's the riddle. The security cameras clock Ina entering the elevator for the final time at 3:41 a.m. But the log of key swipes at her door shows her entering at 3:58. So where was she then, and what exactly could she have been doing? Those missing 17 minutes lead police to pursue another theory. Could Ina be a prostitute? Maybe in that time she's gone to meet a John in his room. Perhaps that encounter led to the attack.
They didn't tell me exactly, are you a prostitute? All right? But the questions were like, you know, if I ever had a sex for money, And if this kind of question, it was emotionally difficult, very, very, very difficult.
Police pursue that theory, but as the investigation proceeds,
I'm picking up absolutely zilch, nothing to indicate that she was a prostitute.
So that left you kind of at a dead end at that point.
Right.
For months, the case would remain a puzzle, scattered in pieces. And to finally solve it, police would turn to an unlikely source with an even more unlikely theory.
I could feel it. I knew this was the guy.
Stay with us.
We return to 2020 and the Hunch.
If you've ever met private investigator Ken Brennan, no doubt you remember him.
I don't know, I'd like to say Ken Brennan's just an honest, straightforward guy, kind of easy to read. What you see is what you get.
When he's not riding motorcycles or pumping iron, he spends his time doing what he really enjoys: solving crimes.
What is it about this kind of work that attracts you?
He doesn't like catching bad guys, you know. That's quite rewarding in itself, and something I've always, enjoyed doing, even when I was a youngster.
After decades in law enforcement, first as a police officer on Long Island, New York, then as a DEA agent in Florida,
I've been working in law enforcement since 1975.
Brennan now works as a private investigator.
Is it true that you've never taken a sick day?
No, I really haven't. When you enjoy what you're doing, it never seems like a job then.
It seems Brennan has a particular devotion to solving sex crimes. To this day, he still carries around the arrest file for the first sexual predator he ever interrogated.
They're the worst crimes, I feel, of all of them. And there's too many of them out there that aren't solved.
By November 2005, nearly 9 months after Ina Budnitska had been attacked, the case of the airport Regency rapist was on a slow boat to the cold case file.
Were you thinking at any point that this case is just unsolvable?
I don't like to think that, and I really didn't think that. I always kept hope that something would eventually solve the case. I don't like to give up.
In the aftermath of her attack, Ina has filed a multi-million-dollar lawsuit against the hotel.
We felt they could have had better security. They weren't monitoring the security cameras correctly. They let an assailant onto the grounds of the hotel.
Where were the security? Why and how somebody would get into your room without the key? How?
The hotel denies any wrongdoing and needs an investigator to disprove the woman's claims. That's where Ken Brennan comes in.
We have to clear the responsibility of the hotel. What happened in our hotel, it can happen in the best hotel in the world.
The biggest glaring thing was that nobody really knew how it occurred. Everybody loves a good mystery. And everybody wants to be the ability to solve something that somebody wasn't able to do before. Sure, of course, that would be rewarding.
Like many city detectives, Alan Foote isn't wild about private eyes.
What did you think of Ken Brennan when you first laid eyes on him?
This guy's going to drive me nuts.
But Brennan isn't your typical hired gun, and Foote has a hunch he's somehow different. Maybe it's his experience, maybe his straight talk.
Most police officers don't like PIs.
How'd you get him to accept and to trust you?
They said, hey, listen, Alan, I'm not going to mess up your case. I'm not going to screw it up. If we're going to solve this thing, we're going to be a team. We're going to work it together.
You don't like PIs, but yet you trusted him. Why?
There was just something about him that was honest. I really felt that he was going to do what he said.
One of the first things Foote shares is the DNA results that have come back on his first two suspects, Ina's friend, Peter Demolius, and night manager, George Perez, both negative.
I was cleared of any charges because apparently, had nothing to do with it.
So those two are eliminated, but Brennan shares the detective's suspicions about Ina herself. So he goes back to that cul-de-sac and interviews the neighbors.
Remember about that? Where exactly were they across the street?
He combs through Ina's background, even puts her under surveillance.
There was nothing indicative of her being a prostitute.
So you ruled that out?
So I ruled that out pretty readily in the very beginning of the investigation.
I knew who I was. I know who I am.
Still, there's that strange 17-minute gap between the security camera at the elevator and the key card swipe at Ina's door. Where'd she been?
I said, well, listen, did anybody bother to take the time to find out if the time stamp on the security cameras, if that matched the time stamp on the card access system, which nobody ever did. And it turns out when we did do that, there was a 17-minute lapse.
So that mystery is solved.
So that mystery was solved.
Now, Brennan has another hunch that the entire incident could have been an elaborate scheme to shake down the hotel.
I thought that in this particular case that it might have been a possibility that she could have been involved in some kind of a scam, that the whole purpose was to try to obtain money from either the insurance company or from the hotel itself. It happens all over the world.
Because she was filing a lawsuit against the hotel, a big lawsuit.
Exactly, and she didn't make a very good witness because she flip-flopped on a lot of the statements that she had given to police.
It just made me to laugh. I mean, I don't know from where did they take this and who came up with this idea.
The only thing Brennan has resembling a witness statement is Ina's muddled memory about being attacked in her room by a number of men. So he takes a novel approach to that evidence. He throws it out.
The last thing that I put faith in is a victim statement, because when something traumatic happens to them, their memory becomes distorted. The thing you have to base your decisions on and where you head in an investigation is based on the evidence. What evidence do you have at that particular time?
That means one thing.
I believe that no matter what happened, it was going to be in the videotape.
How much footage were you going to have to comb through? Because there were a lot of cameras in the hotel, right?
Hours upon hours upon hours upon hours. It was extensive. That's something that you have to go through almost frame by frame.
Frame by frame?
It was countless amount of hours.
Now, every guest is a potential suspect. Hundreds of them, as well as every desk assistant, bellman, and janitor.
You had to watch each and every frame on every video because we were originally looking for possibly an employee that might have moved one of the cameras out of the location it was originally at and maybe possibly snuck the victim past that way.
Slowly but surely, Brennan eliminates every suspect. Everybody but one.
She goes out on the video, she goes out of the hotel early in the morning. When she returns, there's a big, large black man standing with her, and she just has a quick conversation with him, and they get onto the elevator together. I'm trying to look to see, do they look like they know each other? Because again, I'm thinking this could still possibly be a scam or something like that, you know? And after you keep reviewing it, it doesn't look like they have any kind of familiarity. He's just offering her to walk in front. She's not acknowledging him like she knows him.
Brennan's now rejected his own conspiracy theory.
It didn't appear to be staged at all.
But his focus on this man seems like just as much of a stretch.
Later on during the video, he's seen exiting the elevator. So we follow him to another camera and he goes off the property. While I'm watching the video of this person, this large person, black person coming off the elevator, and I went through this frame at a time.
And now, in extreme slow motion, Ken Brennan is about to crack the case.
This was the defining moment in the whole case, right here.
Don't go anywhere.
So what do you think Ken Brennan has spotted on that surveillance footage? Any guesses? We're live tweeting tonight, so let us know using the hashtag ABC2020. We'll be right back.
2020 continues. Here again, Deborah Roberts.
This young lady vanished into thin air. You know, that was the intriguing part. That was the piece of the puzzle that you had to solve first.
Private investigator Ken Brennan believes a big piece of that puzzle lies with this big guy. He's seen entering the elevator with Ina at 3:41 a.m., then exiting the hotel with a suitcase at 5:28.
About an hour later, he comes back and he re-enters the hotel, but he doesn't have the suitcase with him. That suitcase that he brought out earlier comes back a little over an hour later without the suitcase.
Huh. Does that register something right away in your mind?
As soon as he comes back without the suitcase, now he becomes a person of interest to me. He was the only one that had the time and the opportunity to commit the crime and come back to the scene.
Now, upon closer and repeated inspection, Brennan returns to this crucial moment when the man exits the elevator and gives the suitcase a telltale tug.
The suspect has to reach back and grab the handles with both hands to pull that suitcase out of the crack. I do a lot of traveling, you do a lot of traveling, I'm sure you have a lot of your clothing items in it. Was it ever so heavy you needed two hands to pull it out of the crack? No, probably not. As soon as he made the tug, as soon as he tugged out with both hands, it was like a light bulb went off in my head and I said, this is my guy, this is my guy. Because she's in that suitcase.
But that light bulb was only over Brennan's head.
You know, where's this guy coming out of left field with this black male suspect?
Nobody believes a grown woman could fit into a little suitcase.
But this is a small suitcase. What would lead you to even think a woman could fit into a small suitcase?
Well, the reason why I thought a woman might be able to fit in the suitcase is because this is a large guy. So our frame of reference on how large a suitcase is might be a little off. So I decided to use a measurement of the suitcase in relationship with markings on the elevator itself.
With that reference point, incredibly, Brennan's able to determine the bag is actually 29 inches high. And examining this image, where we see the suitcase against this floor runner, he concludes the bag is 19 inches wide, just like this one.
Then I knew exactly how wide the suitcase was.
And then you were able to really theorize that someone could fit in there.
That's correct. What I did was I had one of the fellows that worked for me had a girlfriend who was that size. So we got a hold of a suitcase that was the same dimensions and see if she could fit in it. And
oh, she did.
Goes, yeah, it can. She fits fine.
If you think that sounds a bit bizarre, we thought so too. So we went to a local gymnastics school and asked these two instructors to help us. This woman stands 5'3", just like Ina, and sure enough, she fits comfortably inside the suitcase and gets zipped in by her friend. She'll be okay. Then she gets wheeled around the gym, emerging no worse for wear.
So I knew that she would fit. All I was doing is basically validating what my hunch was.
Brennan has now deduced the one theory of the case which matches all the evidence. This man attacked Ina sometime after they entered the elevator together. He dragged her body out of the hotel in this suitcase, drove off with her, dumped her body at that vacant lot, then returned.
All the puzzles started fitting in together at that particular point, and I knew I had my guy. Then I just had to find out who the heck he was.
But it's still too early for high fives. Isolating the perpetrator on video is one thing, catching him another. And for Ken Brennan, that job is quickly becoming an obsession.
I said, hell or high water, I know I'm right. I could feel it. I knew this was the guy, and I was gonna catch this guy.
See what's next.
We return to 2020 and the Hunch.
When Ken Brennan first floated his theory of the crime, that the woman had been attacked by this large man and dragged out of the airport Regency in his suitcase, Detective Alan Foote thought it was a bad joke.
Are you thinking that maybe he's a little out there?
Sometimes we're all out there, but it's a lead. It's not on my priority because I'm not looking for blackmail. I'm putting this lead off to the side while I pursue the leads that I have.
Even Brennan's employers were skeptical.
This is a pretty bizarre theory. How does this go over with the hotel?
Well, it didn't really go over with the hotel too much either. In fact, one of the owners said, what the hell kind of an investigator are you? He goes, you're telling me it's this big black guy. Everybody else says it's, and she says it's two white Hispanic, you know, where's this coming from? You know, what kind of investigator are you? And they all started laughing inside the room. And that's what really pissed me off. And I said, hell or high water, I'm going to find out. I'm going to prove to these people that I'm right. I know I'm right. I could feel it. I knew this was the guy. And I was going to catch this guy.
There's some debate among Brennan's clients, the Airport Regency Hotel and its insurer, about whether to continue the investigation and find the attacker or just settle the lawsuit with Ina and walk away. But the hotel's vice president, Jose Vasquez, keeps Brennan in the game.
There was no way that we quit in that moment. We wanted to go up to the end.
So it was because of his little bit of arm twisting that we were able to carry on with the investigation.
So now you're focused on this big, tall, black guy with the bag that you've seen on camera. The case is pretty cold at this point. He's long gone. How do you even begin to try to find this guy?
You know, I don't know if he was somebody that was staying at the hotel, that was a visitor that was just visiting, you know, one of the other people from the hotel. If this guy just walked off the street, you know, we didn't know. So that was the next part of the investigation.
The hotel photocopies the IDs of registered guests, but as you can see, the facial images are unrecognizable and thus useless.
So you go back to the tape.
So I go back to the tape.
And what do you find?
I was looking to see if he had any interaction with any of the other people at the hotel. And he does. He ends up interacting with another black fellow.
And take a look at this. The second man is often seen wearing a lanyard around his neck with what looks like a name tag.
I'm trying to find out why he's wearing this name tag.
The problem? It's impossible to make out the name with the naked eye. So Brennan calls up the people who own the most powerful telescopes in the world, NASA.
I say, listen, you know, I know you guys look at, you know, digital photography from, you know, light years away. You know, maybe you could help me out on this case that I'm working.
But for this mission, not even NASA had the right stuff.
So they couldn't do it?
No, so they informed me, listen, you know, we tried, but we're not able to get that for you. So I said, okay, fine, you know, let's go back to the tape.
Fortunately, the next clue is spelled out in bold letters.
Later on in the video, when he's out by the hallway, you can clearly see that this says Mercury. But I just didn't.
What's Mercury?
That was the problem. I didn't know.
Mercury. Is it the car, the planet, the element? There's no way to tell until, in another critical frame of video, Brennan notices another word written on the back of that same shirt.
You can clearly make out a V and an O, but it was difficult to see what was in the middle.
And for whatever reason, I don't know. I think that says Verado. What the hell's a Verado? I said, I don't know, but let's find out. So then I went online and did a search.
And I got a hit, and it showed that Mercury Marine made a brand new outboard engine by the name of Verado.
Right, because after I saw that and I realized that was a boat engine, I said, these guys are working at the boat show.
In fact, the Miami Boat Show was held the same week of the crime, and as usual, Mercury was the major exhibitor. For a second, Brennan feels he's on the verge of closing the case, assuming the suspects worked with the guy in the T-shirt, and they both work for Mercury. It's just a matter of getting someone there to identify him.
Mercury Marine is actually, the parent company is a company by the name of Brunswick. I end up contacting Brunswick, speaking to the head of security. And I said, listen, do you have any employees that stayed at the Airport Regency Hotel? And he said, no, we didn't.
So it's a dead end.
So it's a little bit of a setback.
So now he's got to find yet another needle in what's becoming a long row of haystacks.
So I said, well, trust me, one of the guys there was walking around with one of those Mercury Verado shirts. Somebody was giving them out. So he goes, okay, let me get back to you. So I said, okay, fine. A couple of days later, he calls me back. He says, as far as we can tell, the only people that received any of the shirts, the Verado shirts, were employees that worked at the food court.
So another connection.
So there's another connection. I said, well, let's find out who's the caterer for the Miami Boat Show. So it ends up becoming a company called Centerplate.
Another lead, another headache. Centerplate tells Brennan it runs concessions at events all across the country and brings in people from all over. It reimburses workers for housing but doesn't keep track of where they stay. The company's cooperative but just can't say if any of its people slept at the Airport Regency. For Brennan, another possible dead end.
I've come a long way, and I said, I'm not going to give up on this guy yet. I said, listen, he's really distinctive. The guy's about 6'4". He's a black fella, and he wears glasses, you know, big, thick glasses. So I said, does anybody remember working with a guy that matches that description? Sure enough, about a week or so later, I called him again, said, you know, gotten anywhere? He says, listen, he says, nobody knows the guy's name, but one of the people that remembered seeing this fella working there remembers something about him being hired out of Louisiana. He believes that's where he's from.
So now you've gone from Miami to Louisiana.
So now I'm over in Louisiana.
Brennan's manhunt takes a big turn into the Big Easy.
There was no doubt in my mind that if he was on your trail, he was going to catch you.
See what's next.
"2020 continues with The Hunch.
Mardi Gras in New Orleans. It's the year's biggest party.
I think the thing you miss the most when I retire is Mardi Gras.
It was here in 2000 that Police Captain Ernest Dimma found himself arresting a rowdy college kid in the heart of the French Quarter. Things didn't go smoothly.
In the course of the arrest, a young college kid was able to get out of my grasp and start running down Wall Street.
Then, just as his suspect is about to escape into a sea of hardcore revelers,
out of nowhere, from the crowd, comes this dark, imposing figure.
That dark, imposing figure? Guess who?
I had taken my kids to Mardi Gras, and there was an incident where this police captain had arrested somebody, and the guy broke away from him and started running through the crowd. And I witnessed it, and I ran the guy down.
He chases the kid down, halfway down a block. He tackles him in the middle of the street. By the time we get there, he's fully under control.
That night, the two law officers form a fast bond.
I gave him the nickname Batman just because how the incident unfolded.
Yeah, he called me Batman because I had a black turtleneck.
And you swooped in.
Black jeans on, so when I went and grabbed the guy, he said I looked like Batman coming through the crowd. So
I swore to him that anything he ever needed from me, I was there for him.
That time is now. Brennan calls Dimma and tells him about his case. The suspect with the suitcase, the guy with the Mercury Verado t-shirt, the boat show, and the tip that the company running the food court, Center Plate, had employed a man from Louisiana who fit the suspect's description.
Sherlock Holmes would be impressed.
I don't know about Sherlock Holmes, but I thought I was on a roll, so we figured we might as well keep going. I was certain that I was right. And that's one thing about me, once I'm certain about something, hell or high water, I'm going to prove my case.
It's time for another Brennan-esque shot in the dark. Figuring his suspect works in food services year-round, he starts investigating the bigger concession venues around New Orleans. Places like Zephyr Field, the local minor league baseball stadium, and of course, the Superdome. But finding folks in New Orleans is no simple task. Between the time of the 2005 Miami boat show and Brennan's investigation, New Orleans had endured tragic and tough times.
Tonight, the overwhelming, catastrophic damage from Hurricane Katrina.
Officials estimate that 80% of New Orleans is now underwater.
Went through New Orleans. He was no longer there. I didn't even know if he was going to be alive or not anymore.
Batman Brennan explains his situation to Captain Dimma, and he asked Dimma's help finding any information on his suspect.
Wouldn't be in a computer because we really didn't have any information on him per se that I know of.
Dimma's people put out feelers, and soon all the gambles and all the guesses start paying off. The New Orleans police confirmed that Brennan's mystery man was working at the Superdome right when Katrina hit.
We were able to put the name with the body and come up with a hard description on the person that he was looking for.
One of Dimma's men breaks the news.
Calls me up and says, listen, I got good news and I got bad news. And I said, all right, well, give me the good news. He says, the good news is I think I know who he is.
After months of trying to put a name to the video image, it's so close Brennan can taste it. And incredibly, when he finally hears it, he can't believe his ears.
I go, you gotta be kidding me.
Stay with us.
Our second hour of 2020. The Hunch starts right now. A victim who can't remember and an obsessed private eye who can't forget.
I'm so far into this investigation now, there's no way I'm going to let this guy go.
Putting the pieces together.
You stuffed her in there thinking she was a corpse.
Sherlock Holmes would be impressed.
But that's just the beginning.
I knew I had the guy. I got to get his up there to get him. I'm telling you, it's the guy.
A gut instinct that Ina wasn't his first victim.
On that night, her whole life changed.
I could just see the monster come over. I just want you to catch this guy.
Can they get him before he strikes again?
I had a question. Why me? What did I do? Why me?
The Hunch.
I told you I'd be back.
Once again, Deborah Roberts.
Imagine walking into a hotel elevator in Miami. Then somewhere, somehow, you can't remember exactly, a stranger attacks you.
You're begging for your life. And for someone, it's funny. It's just a laugh.
You black out. Your lifeless body is found naked, savagely beaten and raped, and discarded in a vacant cul-de-sac 10 miles away.
And you don't understand why it's going on, or what is going on.
Days and nights pass. No one's arrested. Your body begins to heal. Your psychological scars remain raw.
Many things you're blaming, you're asking yourself a lot of questions. Why? Did I look different? Did I act different?
That was where 23-year-old Ina Budnitska found herself in the spring of 2006, angry, depressed, and desperate for answers. But what she didn't know was that there was a man she'd never met who was now fixated on finding her attacker.
Any case can be solved, but you need a lot of hard work, a lot of perseverance, but you need a lot of luck too.
Private investigator Ken Brennan was hired by the hotel's insurance company, which was trying to fend off a lawsuit Ina had filed. From the get-go, this PI let it be known he was interested in more than just a paycheck.
I informed my clients that right from the very beginning, that, listen, I'm here to find out what happened. If you want to find somebody, find out what happened, what the truth is in a situation, I'm the guy for you. But otherwise, I'm not interested.
Brennan was indeed interested in the challenge of this mysterious case.
That was something that I was interested in. I like to do puzzles in the newspaper. I enjoy that type of thing.
On top of that, for as long as he can remember, Brennan has had a certain fastidiousness.
You gotta pay attention to all the details.
Which extends into every facet of his life. It was that obsessive-compulsive personality which drove Brennan to sift through every frame of the hotel security camera footage from the night of Ina's attack.
Hours upon hours to do so.
Hard labor, which would lead to the one frame of video that would blow the case wide open. Brennan's convinced that this big guy, who just happens to be getting into the elevator with Ina the last time she's seen on camera, is the suspect. He believes the mystery man attacked Ina somewhere in the hotel, stuffed her in his suitcase, then drove her out to that vacant lot and dumped her body.
He believes he kills her, okay? He didn't stuff that girl in that suitcase thinking that she was alive. He stuffed her in there thinking she was a corpse.
It's a decent theory, but so far no one else seems to find it compelling. In a foggy and fragmented account, Ina has told police she believes she was raped by two white males with Latin accents, not a lone black man. But Brennan is undaunted.
I'm so far into this investigation now, there's no way I'm going to let this guy go. I'm going to track this guy down.
But how to identify a man only seen on videotape? An unbelievable guessing game is the only hope. Based on a t-shirt worn by another man seen with the suspect, Brennan guesses they're with the boat engine company and more likely working at the boat show. Maybe he got his t-shirt at the food court where sometimes they're handed out. Random? Yes, but also right. Centerplate, the catering company running the food court, says it can't identify the man, but someone fitting his description was hired out of New Orleans, which has since been devastated and depopulated by Hurricane Katrina.
In New Orleans, the city that thought it dodged a bullet, it's now a disaster zone.
He doesn't work here anymore. He's gone. To go because Hurricane Katrina happened.
Fortunately, thanks to a police contact in New Orleans, Brennan, against all odds, has tracked down his suspect's name. But get this.
They come back and tell me the guy's name is Mike Jones. I go, you gotta be kidding me. Mike Jones. Was there 10 million of them?
Mike Jones.
Mike Jones, that's the guy's name. I said, geez,
That's as generic as you can get.
Yeah, I mean, if the guy's name was like Mikhail Gorbachev or something, it'd be a hell of a lot easier to track down, but a guy named Mike Jones is pretty tough to.
At least there's a middle name, Lee. So now, after some basic detective work, Brennan's theory takes a big leap from speculation to certainty.
Well, what I did was I took that information, I went back to the hotel registry. And lo and behold, what do I find out? That there was a Michael Lee Jones Jr. that did stay at the Airport Regency Hotel. And
that's a pretty big moment.
Yeah, well, that's an aha moment where you say, hey, listen, at least I know I was on the right track. I got the right guy. And they notated on his cars that he did work for Centerplate. The Mike Jones that I was looking for was the same Mike Jones that was in Miami at the Miami Boat Show, okay? That I know. And now I just got to find out where the hell is he.
Brennan's gut instincts have been on a true winning streak, so he figures why not roll the dice once more. Michael Jones doesn't work for Centerplate anymore, but Brennan's willing to gamble he hasn't switched careers.
I said the likelihood is that even though he doesn't work for Centerplate anymore, that he's probably going to work for one of their competitors doing the same line of work. So I asked the guy from Centerplate, I said, listen, give me a list of your 10 top competitors in this business.
Starting from there, Brennan digs deeper. He builds a master list of the major catering and concession companies in the country. He calls them one by one, looking for a Michael Jones. Near the bottom of that list is a company called Ovations, based in Tampa.
It just so happens that I was on my way over to Tampa at that particular time. I made an appointment to go see him in person. I talked to the COO of the company, and I said, listen, do you have a Michael Lee Jones working for you? He says, oh, listen, he says, I can't help you with that. He says, I can't give you any information about my employees. You require it, I'd require a subpoena to be able to release that to you.
They want a subpoena. What does that tell you?
So what tells me that the guy works there, Why else ask for a subpoena? I talked to 35 other companies. Nobody had an objection to tell me that, no Michael Lee Jones worked there.
At this point, it's time for Brennan to cash in his chips with Alan Foote, the Miami-Dade detective who'd originally handled the case and who's been willing to let Brennan run with it.
Now was the time to call my buddy, Detective Foote, and tell him, listen, I need a subpoena.
How urgent was it for you to get that subpoena?
I wanted it right away.
I obtained a subpoena for Michael Lee Jones's records, and as soon as I received the information, I faxed the information to Ken.
It was very important. And fortunately, he was able to obtain a subpoena for me and get it faxed over to the company at Ovations, to the COO there, while I was still present.
Ovations finally releases the information. And just as Brennan suspected, Michael Jones is on the payroll. He's currently working at a minor league baseball park in Frederick, Maryland.
So I said, listen, we got to get some DNA from this guy, either from voluntarily or without his knowledge, because I have a DNA profile from the victim, and we have to match it to somebody.
At long last, Ken Brennan and the mystery man with the suitcase are about to come face to face.
Now's the time. Now's the big day.
See what's next.
2020 continues. Here again, Deborah Roberts.
You take whatever clue you have, wherever you can go, and you just keep working at it and see where that takes you. It might take you to a dead end, might take you to a blind alley, but it might take you to the promised land.
For Ken Brennan, the promised land is right here. A modest apartment in Frederick, Maryland, occupied by Michael Jones in the spring of 2006, 1,000 miles away from the hotel where Ina Budnitska was attacked. Brennan thinks Miami detective Alan Foote should go collect a DNA sample from Jones, but Foote is still somewhat skeptical.
He's telling me, I got the guy, this is the guy. This is gonna be your guy. And I'm thinking, it's a theory, but I still have no indication that it's a black male.
So you're not there yet?
I'm not there yet. I'm not there.
And I can understand his reluctance. However, I knew I had the guy. I gotta get his ass up there to get him.
A few weeks later, Detective Alan Foote flies up from Florida and is now the first investigator to confront Michael Jones. He finds Jones here, managing the concessions at this minor league baseball stadium.
What was he like when you first met him?
A teddy bear.
A teddy bear. A big, mild-mannered guy?
Mild-mannered guy. He was soft-spoken. He appeared to be educated. He was very, I thought, forthcoming.
Jones is not only cooperative, he's acting like a man without a care in the world.
Oh, he's staying cool as a cucumber. He's just very relaxed, leaned back in the chair, no hiding or stuttering, looking for something.
Jones confirms he was in Miami working at the boat show and staying at the airport Regency when Ina was attacked.
So I'm thinking, okay. So I said, do you have any sex with European women? And he says, yes, but it was with a German woman at the boat show. So I have to throw out some more at him. Was it a Russian girl? Was it at the hotel? And he's completely denying it. And he sounds credible. He's being totally cooperative.
Then a real surprise.
And so I came out and eventually said, I'm working a rape case where the girl was beaten and left for dead. Did you do it? And he says, well, no, of course not.
And does he seem believable at that point?
Yes, he does. And then I asked him, would you be willing to give a DNA specimen? Because I have specimens from the rape. And he said, absolutely.
Now, what did that tell you, that he was so willing and...
I figured the guy didn't do it. I called Ken and told him, this is not your guy.
He goes, I don't know, Ken, I don't think so. I don't think it's the guy. I talked to him, I said, yeah, I know you talked to him. I'm telling you, it's the guy.
It'll take months for the DNA test to come back. In the meantime, Brennan has called this man, Frederick Police Sergeant Tom Chase.
I informed Lieutenant Chase that I believe that he was a serial rapist, if not a serial murderer possibly, and that you know, he might be a person of interest for him to keep an eye on, just you know, in case something happened in one of those neighborhoods that he could possibly be responsible for.
I utilized my contacts to keep an eye on the fact that he was still in town, because I want to make sure he's available for them when they're ready to come and get him.
This is the ballpark where he was working at the time, and this is where he was living.
Lieutenant Chase takes precautions, knowing a possible serial rapist is living under his nose.
I was more diligent in keeping track of the reports that were coming in for any type of a suspicious person or any type of sexual assaults.
He had his officers going by to keep an eye on him. He was going by on his own time on his way home from work.
But Brennan's not content to just watch matters unfold from afar. He makes his own trip to Maryland and gets Michael Jones to meet him at the ballpark.
And I interviewed him for 3 successive days.
The guy is calm and collected. What does he tell you?
He says, listen, I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah, I was at the boat show. Yeah, I hooked up with a couple girls while I was there, but I don't know anything about this Russian girl.
Are you believing him?
No.
Not at all?
Not for a minute. Not for a second, because the first thing is, if he had nothing to do with it, why would he talk to me for 3 days? The reason why he talked to me for 3 days is because he knows that I know more about this case than anybody did. So he's trying to find out from me, you know, how much he has to worry. How much of this case does this guy know? You know, how close is he to me?
Still, could someone who's guilty remain so calm and friendly? And why would anybody but an innocent man volunteer his DNA?
So it doesn't throw you that he's cool, calm, and collected? It doesn't trouble you at all that he seems to be cooperative?
Not at all. I knew for sure that this was the guy.
After interviewing Jones, Brennan offers his own cool and final message.
So let me tell you something. I know you did this. I said, this ain't like a bad dream where you're just going to wake up and it's going to be over. I said, take a good look at my face. I said, you're going to see this face again. I said, because I'm coming for you.
The next time Brennan speaks to Jones will be inside this interrogation room. Will his far-out hunches prove Brennan correct? Or will his theories all go up in smoke?
You better remember how that happened. Something went bad.
I didn't hurt that girl.
Something went bad. You might not have thought you heard it.
I didn't do that.
Somebody did it.
Stay with us.
We return to 2020 and The Hunch.
Before the DNA tests come back on Michael Jones, Detective Alan Foote gets an unexpected visit from Ina Budnitska.
She came to my office and said she didn't know if she was dreaming or if it was a reality, but she remembers being in the hotel room and sitting on the bed, and across from her was a black male.
Wow.
Wow is right.
Detective Foote shows Ina a photo lineup, including a picture of Jones.
And he asked me if I recognize anybody. And I chose a person from the lineup. And this is the person who basically raped me. I said.
It's all starting to come together. And then the DNA results finally arrive.
So you got the DNA results. What did you think at that moment?
I called Ken up, and I says, you're not going to believe this.
Detective Foote calls me up and says, hey, Ken, you're not going to believe this. I go, what? He goes, it's him. I go, no, yeah, no kidding. Yeah, I know it's him.
What was that moment like?
Oh, it was total elation. You know, I was happy.
It's enough for an arrest warrant and a trip back to Maryland to see Michael Jones.
Now it's time to make an arrest.
Right.
How does that happen?
I fly to Frederick, Maryland. I meet up with Ken Brennan and members of the Frederick Police Department. I fill them in that I've got the warrant, so we all head out. We're caravanning like John Wayne in a wagon train, or the cavalry's coming, because we're going to go get our guy. And we go to his apartment. There he is.
We knock on the door, and comes to the door, and he answers, and we look at each other face to face, and I said, I told you I'd be back.
You're being charged with rape, all right? She says I raped her?
We already have the hit on the DNA, okay? Now it's just a question of interrogating them to see if I can get this guy to roll on it, right?
In this interrogation room, Foote and Brennan began a good cop, bad cop routine.
Look at these. I didn't do that. You were there. I didn't do that.
And Jones tries to explain away the DNA match.
Once we started to throw the fact that, you know, obviously he was under arrest for this kidnapping or rape, his story changed.
Just give us your version of what went down. And you only get one chance at it.
All right, I'm straight up.
I know the only thing he's going to come up with is she was a prostitute. I paid for her. She was fine when I left her. I have no idea what happened to her after her, because they already have their cover story, okay?
Sure enough, Jones claims he went out with his friend in the Mercury T-shirt to a strip club that night. As he returned to the hotel, he says he saw Ina hanging out front with some other women.
I mean, obviously they were hookers or whatever. And, you know, we were talking, they were like, you know, we want to have some fun.
And then what happens next? Do you go to her room? She go to your room?
It was her room.
You went to her room?
Mm-hmm. And then, you know, she whispers in my ear $100. So we did it, and I gave her $100, and I left.
He's a victim. He's a victim for everybody. Easy to blame you. Easy to blame you.
Then what happened after that, after you had sex with her?
Went back to my room.
So you don't know what happened to her. That's what you're telling me, right?
Yes, sir.
Unfortunately for Jones, the hotel cameras tell a different story. It's true he and his friend were talking to some women at 3:33 a.m. when Ina left to get that phone card. But look, she walks right past without ever talking to anybody.
There wasn't any kind of an exchange between the two of them. It would have been indicative at all of somebody soliciting a prostitute or a prostitute soliciting a John.
And then there's this. The hotel records show that Jones didn't check out of his room until February 22nd, one full day after the attack. So why would he be seen leaving with his suitcase at 5:28 the morning before, only to return without it an hour later?
So he put his suitcase in the trunk of the car. But he never came back to get the suitcase. Why'd you leave the hotel when you weren't supposed to? You still had another day to stay.
Here's Jones' explanation.
You know, I took my downstairs and put it in the trunk. I think I went to 7-Eleven or something for a soda.
In the middle of the night. Not in the morning when you're checking out.
Because I wasn't even sure if I was going to sleep, and I wasn't sure when we were checking out. I couldn't remember if we were leaving that day or the next day. I wasn't sure.
Still, a sympathetic jury might overlook those question marks and accept Jones's account, reducing this to a case of he says,
I didn't hurt her in any kind of way.
And she can't really remember.
The memory was not clear because it's whether because of I don't know.
But this is the one opportunity that you have to be able to show to the jury what a liar this person is. Even though he's calm and he's cool and he looks like he hasn't done a thing in the world, it was my job to be able to show that he's a liar.
So Brennan begins circling around that moment he believes is the key to the case, the suitcase and the telltale tug.
So the only way is to draw him in little by little, little by little. And that's what I did. I set him up, ask him a few questions. I let him give me some kind of innocuous answer. And I come back to it later.
Let's back up a little bit.
I said, well, you're on the video here, and I'll show him the video. I said, you're leaving, you know. Where were you going? He said, well, I was going out to my car.
What stuff did you bring out to your car?
All I have in the suitcase.
And I come back later, and I said, oh, by the way, what was in the suitcase?
Well, let me ask you this. What do you have in your bag when you went out to your car?
My clothes.
How much clothes did you have?
Just a bunch of shit. We were there like, I think, 2 weeks.
How much stuff? How big was your bag?
A pause. For the first time, Jones is jammed up.
You could just see the wheels turning, and he's saying, well, I got to come up with a scenario. Why is this, you know, heavier than it appears to be?
How much clothes did you have? Did you have, like, bowling balls in it? How heavy was it? Was it fairly light?
No, it was heavy. I had a bunch. I had my Xbox in there, all kinds of
Yeah, Xbox was there. Anything else? Your clothes?
Clothes.
How many pairs of shoes? Books. You had books?
How many books did you have? He goes, oh, I had 5 of them. I go, oh, you had 5 books. So how big were they? I said, oh, big novels, huh? I said, you're an avid reader.
I read a lot.
What kind of reading do you do?
Science fiction.
Science fiction?
But then this avid reader suddenly has a case of amnesia.
What was the name of the books you were reading?
I have no idea. I couldn't even tell you what the name of the book was. Just took out my pocket.
Well, what's the book you've been reading right now?
I couldn't tell you. This was what it said. I couldn't tell you the name of that one.
By now, Brennan's had enough.
Everything you're saying doesn't add up. It doesn't make sense.
What doesn't make sense?
Your timeline stinks. Your story stinks. The whole story stinks.
He's sure Jones is lying. And more importantly, he believes any jury viewing this video will think so too.
Because any of the things he was talking about made absolutely no sense whatsoever. Who goes and leaves, takes their clothes out to the car 2 days before they check out? Nobody. Who's 6'4", weighs 380 pounds, has some underwear and an Xbox in the suitcase and needs 2 hands to pull it out of a crack? Nobody. Doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense because it's all bull. What is true
is that he already beat this girl. He's dragging her out. He's gone for an hour because he's looking to play for a place to dump her because he thinks she's dead.
Maybe so, but throughout the interrogation...
Would you be willing to take a polygraph exam? Sure.
And a polygraph test right after...
So you don't know what happened to her or how it happened to her? No.
Jones maintains total innocence.
He played his role right to the very end, to the bitter end.
Jones is charged with sexual battery and kidnapping. But before any trial begins, the case against him will nearly fall apart. The defense is about to get a big assist from, of all people, the victim.
I was afraid this guy was just going to get let off. He was going to walk.
Stay with us.
"2020 continues. Once again, Deborah Roberts.
After months of exhaustive investigation, a positive DNA match, and a rigorous interrogation...
So when are you lying? Are you lying then or are you lying now?
Ken Brennan finally thinks he knows what happened in Miami in the wee hours of February 21st, 2005, after this fateful meeting between Ina Budnitska and Michael Jones.
He seems to be very casual right here.
Very casual, just getting onto the elevator. They engage in some type of conversation.
There's no video of any conversation because, remember, for privacy reasons, there are no cameras in the elevators or the upstairs hallways. But Brennan knows the two spoke because back in the interrogation, Jones knew that Ina had been injured working on a cruise ship.
Talked to her, started telling me something about she was disabled, she got hurt on some cruise ship or something.
Ina then goes to her room. We know that because remember, the keycard security log records her swiping the key at her door for the last time just moments later. And on top of that, the red jacket Ina is wearing was recovered on the floor of her room on the 4th floor. But Ina doesn't stay there.
I know the victim said that she believed that it happened in her room, but the evidence doesn't present it to be that way. What the evidence presents is that she was in her room, but somehow or other, I don't know if she was drugged or he convinced her to have a drink with him or something, but somehow or other they ended up in his room, which is on the next floor up. And they end up in his room, and I believe that's where the sexual assault and the kidnapping took place. This was in actuality the crime scene.
Brennan believes that after beating and raping Ina in his room, Jones stuffs her in his suitcase, casually strolls out of the hotel at 5:28 a.m. without attracting the attention of the night manager, George Perez, and drives off. Now he's in a hurry because he's got to be back in time to be at work at the boat show that morning.
What I think is he exits the hotel, he makes a right turn. He goes to the first major intersection because he's not familiar with the area. He's not from the South Florida area. Makes a right on 122nd Avenue. This is an empty cul-de-sac. It's the first opportunity that he's seen from the hotel to here that gives him the opportunity to be able to dispose of the body.
Jones dumps Ina's body, turns around, and makes it back at 6:21 a.m. with time to spare. He saunters into the hotel restaurant at 7:59 and joins his friend at breakfast. Then they head out to the parking lot and off to work.
Just like another day at work.
But after almost a year of sleuthing, Brennan's investigation is about to unravel. Ina refuses to accept his theory, instead sticking to her original story that the attack happened in her room.
I didn't go nowhere. I didn't go to nobody's room. I remember myself going into my room. That's what I remember.
And remember, Ina had told police she'd been attacked by 2 white men with Spanish accents before picking Jones out of that lineup. And even after she'd ID'd Jones, she claimed he was just one of 2 assailants who raped her in a car.
She did give contradictory statements.
Ina's foggy memory could have resulted from the massive head trauma she sustained, or perhaps Jones slipped her some kind of drug. In any case, she made a flimsy witness.
The prosecutor's office was uncomfortable with the fact that Ina's memory was in bits and pieces. With jurors, it's hard really to predict the way they would feel, the way it comes out. it may throw some doubt.
To be clear, except for the circumstantial evidence on the video, the case is becoming thin. There's that DNA match, but it only proves sexual contact, not necessarily rape. Under interrogation, Jones never confesses to Brennan or Foote. He bombs a polygraph test, but those aren't admissible in court. The famous suitcase is never recovered. And unfortunately, just like Michael Jones' rental car, his hotel room has been cleaned countless times in the year before he was ever identified, probably destroying any evidence. Jones' defense attorney smells the prosecution's weakness a mile away.
We believe that they couldn't prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt. The Miami-Dade Police Department, I think, the detectives there believe that since they had DNA and a suspect to match, that he must have been the one who did the rape and the beating, but there's no evidence that he did that at all.
That's a bit of a stretch, but bottom line, it's enough to make the DA's office give up on a lengthy prison sentence.
They didn't feel they could win a case if it went to trial. So you don't know the way that a jury would feel. So the prosecutor's office decided to offer him a plea, which he took.
2 years.
2 years.
2 years.
I was upset. Oh, no, you can't let this guy out. I just told him, you can't.
I was angry. I was angry, but I couldn't do anything. I'm not familiar with the justice system, but I was upset inside. Yes, I was upset.
In fact, everyone involved in the case is upset. Everyone, that is, except Ken Brennan.
See, that didn't bother me either. I said, hey, listen, don't worry about it.
The dogged investigator has yet another hunch.
This wasn't his first time at the rodeo here. He's done this before.
And the hotel security cameras are about to give up one final secret about Michael Jones. Stay with us.
We return to 2020 and The Hunch.
Take a closer look at the security camera footage and watch Michael Jones exiting the hotel with his suitcase. Do you see what Ken Brennan sees?
Take a look at this guy. Just take a look at the video. I said, look how nonchalant this guy is. I said, he believes he murdered this girl, stuffed her in a suitcase, and he's looking to dump her. And look at the way he walks off the elevator and walks through like he's whistling, like he doesn't have a care in the world.
That's what leads Brennan to a chilling conclusion.
There's a problem with this guy. This guy, he's done this before.
Brennan knew Jones' work took him to cities all over the country, giving him plenty of opportunity to meet new women and then disappear.
What better occupation could a serial rapist or a serial murderer have?
So when Detective Foote tells Brennan that Jones copped a plea with a 2-year sentence for the attack on Ina, Brennan plays his final ace.
I said, don't worry about it. Trust me. You take his DNA, put it into CODIS, you're going to get another hit.
And CODIS is the National Registry.
The National Registry that the FBI, that's the DNA data bank that the FBI has.
It takes more than a year, but Brennan is nothing if not patient.
I said, when his profile goes out, trust me, there's going to be other hits out there from people he's done this to already. There was no doubt in my mind. I was certain of it.
Then, in a word, bingo.
I was notified by them that they had DNA that had matched my case.
Detective Terry Thrumston had a cold case up in Colorado Springs. The crime occurred in December of 2005, about 9 months after the attack on Ina Budnitska in Miami. And guess what? About 3 months after Michael Jones had left New Orleans in the wake of Hurricane Katrina, he was working concessions at the Colorado Springs World Arena before taking the job at the ballpark in Frederick, Maryland.
He traveled all over the United States for his job, and he was good at being a rapist.
The Colorado victim, 41-year-old Jennifer Rosler, seen here just minutes before the attack leaving a local convenience store.
On that night, her whole life changed. She was a woman, alone, walking at 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning. The man asked her if she wanted a ride. She said yes and got in his vehicle, got to her apartment. He asked for a drink of water.
When I asked him, you know, you need to leave. You know, I was going to go to bed. And he was like Jekyll and Hyde. I could just see the monster come over him.
And then he sexually assaults her at that point.
You know, he wasn't nervous. He was calm. It was like we was on a date. And I knew, Terry, I knew this happened before. I had a feeling this has happened before because he was too calm.
She wanted to confront him. She wanted justice for what happened.
I just want you to catch this guy.
And you know what? I'm working really hard.
I know you are.
Now, with the DNA hit, it looks like justice may finally be within reach. But it's still far from a done deal. Roessler's decision to let Jones into her apartment raises the possibility that the sex was consensual. And worst of all, just before the start of the trial in January 2009, tragic news.
I kept trying to get a hold of her and couldn't get a hold of her. And I didn't find out till the beginning of December that she had passed away. It was a shock.
Jennifer Roessler had suffered medical problems unrelated to her rape. Now, without the star witness, the best chance to put Michael Jones away for a long time is fading fast. But Thrumston isn't going to let it go and takes the case to trial anyway.
When she died, the case didn't die for me. I wanted to see it through for her and for the other victim.
The trial is something of a reunion. Miami detective Alan Foote heads to Colorado to testify. Eno testifies too, driven by a seething desire to confront her attacker.
I wanted so much just to look into his eyes and I had a question. Why me? What did I do? I mean, why me?
And now, to dispel any reasonable doubts, Thrumston has found a silver bullet, yet another rape victim with a DNA hit.
There was never any hesitation to go and testify against this man. I was more than happy to be there.
This woman, we're calling her Rachel, may have been Jones' first victim. It was back in New Orleans in 2003. Her story should have a familiar ring. A stranger in a car, a ride, and a rape.
And I screamed with everything I had, and the reality was just there was nobody there. There was nobody there.
But now Rachel's voice will be heard. On the stand, she makes a perfect witness.
She was able to describe exactly what had happened to her 6 years later in full detail of what had happened, without a doubt.
And her reputation is unassailable.
I'm a working professional, and I'm a mom.
And above all else, this, a composite sketch Rachel made with New Orleans police of the man who raped her.
It looked almost identical to what Michael Lee Jones looked in the courtroom.
Seeing that sketch next to his face, it was extremely satisfying. I just felt like, yes.
In the Colorado trial, the defense tries to argue the sex with Jennifer Roessler was consensual. But with DNA hits from multiple women all claiming rape and Rachel's sketch, as Ken Brennan might say, no dice.
Within a couple hours, the jury came back and said he's guilty.
Jones is slammed hard, a sentence of 24 years to life. By the time he's eligible for parole, he'll be just shy of his 60th birthday.
And I feel happy that the criminal is in, where he's supposed to be, and he never gonna hurt nobody in the future.
You gave almost 2 years of your life to this case. How did it feel to finally see this guy brought to justice?
I gave 2 years of my life investigatorial-wise, but the victims give a hell of a lot more. They're the ones that should be commended for this, because I can only do the investigation and make an arrest, but they're the ones that put them in prison. The victims are the heroes here. They're the ones that have to get on the stand and say, this is what this guy did to me. This is when he did it to me. This is how he did it.
You need to go through this, as painful and as traumatic and embarrassing as all of that might be. You have to do that because you just don't. You never know how many other women may have been impacted by this person.
Ena doesn't feel like a